Alex, detailed manifesto that you've put together for your plans or Labour's plans for Stockport. Is it costed?
Yes, it is costed. If you look carefully at the details of the manifesto, a lot of it is about new ideas to make sure that existing resources and existing powers that the council have go much further. And in terms of new ideas that look like they might cost money, we have carefully made sure that where they cost money, that they do bring in a revenue benefit to the council. So we don't envisage, in overall terms, this putting a revenue pressure on the council. We're focused much more on delivering what's best for Stockport within the very tight constraints that the council is subject to.
Absolutely. Let's look at transport, because you've said that you'd like to not only bring Metrolink to Stockport Town Centre, but also introduce a scheme to provide discounted bus travel to local residents. What would that look like?
Well, first of all, we're not committing to all residents getting discounts for travelling on buses. What we're very concerned about is people who feel left out, either left out of the job market or left out socially because of the cost of public transport. And I think we have a job to do in identifying who those residents are. So people who, for example, feel that they can't get a job in a particular area because the public transport cost would be too high, or people who, for whatever reason, don't benefit from social aspects in their lives that they would do if bus travel was cheaper. I think we need to do some work on identifying who those people are and what we can do to benefit them through lower cost of bus travel. Now, that will obviously have a cost, providing discounted bus travel, because the bus companies would want to be refunded by that. But we think that those people being more economically active and contributing a lot more and earning a salary will result in a net benefit to Stockport.
Do you know how much it will cost?
No, we don't. We've not looked into that at all.
You got any idea?
No, we don't have an idea at all. But what we do know is that many local authorities across the country have identified this type of programme and scheme to encourage people into work. And what's interesting about Greater Manchester is, as part of the devolution of powers from government down to the regional level, it will include control over bus travel and franchising. And I think that as well as devolution of powers over the skills agenda and employment, this should be part of the mix. So no, I don't have an answer in terms of how much it will cost, but I'm very satisfied that it's something that we can do again in a revenue neutral way.
Do you know how many people it would apply to, roughly?
No, again, this is work that we would need to do. So the first thing we would
in an ideal world.
Yeah. No, all we know from feedback from residents is that there are people who feel that they would be able to get a job much more easily with discounted bus travel. Now, no work has been put into that, and I can't answer that question without that work being carried out. So the first thing to do, and I think it's important to have evidence-based plans, is for the council to carry out that work, if we were in power, in order to come up with that figure, and then we can start looking at cost and the extent to which we can deliver this. So I'm sorry I can't provide that answer here, but I think what we need to do is come up is have a policy first that we believe in, and then work out a way to most effectively implement it.
You'd like to create a publicly owned construction and maintenance company to build and maintain houses in Stockport.
Yeah.
Again, sounds like a lot of investment to go into that.
Yeah. Again, we would look to that to be not only revenue neutral, but to actually save the council and Stockport Homes and other housing associations money over the longer term. Now, this idea, we don't want the council to operate in competition with Stockport Homes or with any social providers of homes in Stockport or any other kind of providers in Stockport. The idea behind this is the problem with relying 100% on private house builders is that they like to build at a rate that is of benefit to them. And they also want to make a profit out of it. And there's nothing wrong with that, because they're a private company and they're private companies and they want to make profits out of it. And generally in the sector, there's about a 20% profit margin for house developers. We think that if we can set up our own construction company to build and maintain homes, we can build them to the same quality, if not higher, at a lower cost. And the council will get its money back from that as a result of selling those homes to housing associations or even to private residents. So what we want to do here is increase the rate of house building, because as people know, we have a real shortage of house building, increase the rate of social housing in Stockport as well, and do it at a lower cost. So if anything, this policy is about saving money rather than costing money.
In terms of providing those homes, something that we spoke about last week with Sue Derbyshire when she was on the programme, Stockport is short of the target of new homes that need to be built. There has been talk about the need for, we've heard lots in the last few years from the central government as well as local government about planning permission and maybe relaxing planning laws, allowing building on certain areas of greenbelt land. Is that something, would you expect more building perhaps on greenbelt land in future?
Well, what the law states about greenbelt land, which I agree with, is that it should only be built on any exceptional circumstances. And if there is a proposal to build on the greenbelt, I would expect that all other sites in the area and across Greater Manchester have been looked into first, and even then an exceptional case can be made to build on the greenbelt. Now, Stockport is in a difficult situation because it does have a shortage of house building land, and there is a lot of greenbelt in Stockport. So this issue is not easy at all, but I think the first thing we need to do is identify sites within Stockport that are suitable for house building. But I would just say that the Greater Manchester Councils together are currently working on a plan for housing and housing development that looks into the future rather than leaving it to individual councils. And what that means is that we can work on a Greater Manchester target for housing rather than in each individual borough. So actually the best way of protecting the greenbelt is to look more cohesively across Greater Manchester rather than doing it at each borough level. So I don't think that the position should be that we should never build on the greenbelt in any circumstances. And of course, there are aspects of the greenbelt that are more worthy of protection than other aspects, but it should still be the last resort, and we should make sure that all other opportunities for development are firstly looked into.
In terms of this publicly owned company that would deal with constructing some of these houses, or all of these houses potentially, I guess is what you're suggesting. It's a lot of exposure, isn't it, for council taxpayers?
It's potentially exposure because it's putting a lot of investment into this, but I think that you wouldn't want to start building houses unless you had a firm commitment or a contract from providers of that house that they would buy it from you, so that it's not seen as a risk. I think it would be a risk to speculate on house building and building the kind of houses that you think people will want to buy in the kind of locations you think they would want to buy. I think that would be risky for the council. But this is about, I think, meeting demand where we know there's demand and doing it at a cheaper cost. So this should not be done in a way that would expose the council taxpayer. If anything, it should be done in a way that saves the money and benefits Stockport.
There's an interesting pledge in there as well about guaranteeing opportunities for school leavers. It says that Labour will guarantee opportunities for school leavers, working with businesses and education providers to provide young people with 12 months of employment, education or training aimed at eradicating local youth unemployment. That's a big statement.
It is, but if you look at government policies on this, they want young people to stay at school now till they're 18, and I think we need to make sure that that's a success. Part of the problem, I think, in terms of youth unemployment is that there's been too much focus on formal education and getting people into full-time courses and university places and college places. And if that's right for individuals, then that's certainly what we should focus on. But I think we need to be honest and accept that for a lot of people, and in terms of the needs of the economy, that's not what's right. We need to get them into employment and experience employment as quickly as possible. Now, the problem is that when you've just left school or you've just left college, you have no work experience. So how can you demonstrate that you're ready to go into these jobs? Now, there are already projects that the council's running to get young people into work or work experience. We want to build on that. And yes, we do want to guarantee work experience of this type to school leavers who want it and think they can benefit from it. I feel that there would would be a big appetite from local employers to work with us on that. But of course, the detailed work would have to be done if we were to win control of the council. But again, it's not a novel policy. It's not something that we've just thought up out of thin air. It is something that a number of councils across the country have implemented.
So you said work experience there. Are we talking about unpaid work experience places? Are we talking about paid employment?
We would want it to be something that that students would get a going rate for. So the law's quite clear about payment for apprenticeships, because some of these could be apprenticeships. The law's also quite clear in terms of minimum wages. We certainly wouldn't want this to be unpaid. It has to be something that's worth the while of students, that they can get experience, but also the experience of having an income. So it really depends on what the nature of the job or the posting is, but we certainly wouldn't want this to be something that young people do for free, unless, of course, it's very much tied in with an education plan that they're part of.
Who would this apply to? Is there a particular age range that you've got in mind, or a particular group of people?
Yes, we'd be looking at school leavers here. We wouldn't be... I mean, I think it's important to support everyone into the world of work, but this specific idea is about young people who are coming out of school who would otherwise not participate in education or employment. Again, work would need to be done in terms of identifying who they are, how many people they are, what sort of employers should be involved in this. But this is very much about giving people that first step onto the ladder of work.
What sort of age range? Are we talking 16 to 20, 16 to 24,
something like that. I mean, it would be around the school leaving age, and the precise school leaving age does hover between 16 or 18, depending on individual circumstances. We would be looking at that age range, yeah.
So have you got any idea how much it would cost to do this? If you were, I mean, there are councils who are subsidising employers to take people on. Is that something that how you would see this working?
It's possible. I think the first thing we need to do is to work with employers to see what their offer would be. This is something that may very well cost money, but when we talk about whose money, well, I mean, it's not just the council that's responsible for young people, it's also the education system, and it's possible that we could do something that works very closely with local colleges and schools on this. There are a number of areas where funding could come from, but I would mention also the devolution of the skills agenda to Greater Manchester, which I think is very, very important here. So again, it could cost the council money, but let's just also think about the amount of money that the council spends on young people who don't carry on their education, who don't go into employment, and who end up needing support from the council anyway, and from social services specifically. That, I would think, would cost a lot more money to the taxpayer than having people in a scheme of this nature. So again, my hope would be that overall it would save money whilst giving people a better future. Yeah,
I mean, because have you got any idea how much investment it would cost? How much it would cost to guarantee these placements? Have you got any sort of concept at all?
No, again, we haven't done the work in terms of how much it would cost.
Because I mean, at the start of the interview, I said, "It's a great manifesto. Is it costed?" And you said yes.
Yeah, it's costed in that we would not. The whole idea behind this is that it would not end up costing the council more money than what it spends.
Except you don't know how much any of it's going to cost. So how can you say that?
Well, it's a fair point, but I think that we want to work as much as possible with schools, colleges and employers. So we would want to minimise the cost to the council. And we would need to do some work in terms of looking at how much this would nevertheless cost the council for these individuals that would be suitable for this compared to what the current costs are. Now, if it ends up that those costs would be greater and the council would not be able to recoup it in the long term, or the education costs would not be able to be recouped, we would have to try a different mechanism or a different way of doing that.